It was an important job. We were responsible for placing Harrison Brothers' own bets in the bond market. Ed lacked experience, but he was bright and learned fast. In normal times, I found him extremely helpful. I wondered how he would cope under pressure. I was going to find out. Work out how much we've dropped. I checked my screens. The initial panic was turning into a rout. The 30-year US Treasury bond, known as the long bond, was already off nearly 2 points. I looked over at Greg, our Treasury trader. I knew he had a $120 million long bond position. He had lost $2 million on that alone. He was furiously working the phones, trying to sell some of his bonds to other traders in the street. The German, French, and British bond markets were also sharply down. There was no doubt that the market had been surprised by this one. "We're $2.4 million down on last night's revaluation," Ed said. 2.4 million. Almost 2 months' profits gone in 10 minutes. I allowed myself 30 seconds to curse my own stupidity, the market, Alan Greenspan, Ed, and my own stupidity again. I needed to get it out of my system, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. "What now?" asked Ed, his face wrought with anxiety. I realised I hadn't answered Ed's question. "We don't panic," I said. "In all this turmoil, some bonds are bound to get out of line. If we see anything that gets too cheap, we pounce." That was easy to say, difficult to carry out in practice. We were responsible for looking for opportunities across all the bond markets, and with prices moving wildly in each of them, it was difficult to pin any of them down. I felt as much as saw Bob Forrester at my shoulder. Bob, a big, broad-shouldered American in his 40s, was in charge of Harrison Brothers' London office. He had been a trader himself, a very successful one. The announcement on his Reuters screen had sent him rushing down to the trading floor. He looked concerned. He knew exactly how large Harrison's positions had been at the close of business the night before. Even so, he watched the scenes of panic in front of him with disapproval. "You all right, Mark?" he asked in his gruff voice. I turned to meet his eye. "We took a bit of a hit," I answered coolly, "but there have to be some good opportunities out there. We'll make it back." Bob looked at me for a moment. He had been where I was now a dozen times before. "Good kid," he said, patting my shoulder, and strode over to where Etienne was exhorting Greg to dump his position. Etienne was given to brilliance on some days, hysteria on others. This was one of the others, and it was infectious. Bob had presence, and that presence was just what was needed to calm the floor down. To work. I examined the screens full of prices and yields in front of me, looking for opportunities. I tried a couple of ideas, but by the time I had checked each one, the prices had moved. I wasn't getting anywhere. I glanced over to Ed, who was involved in a similarly fruitless struggle next to me. "Shall we try Bondscape?" "What? Live?" "Yes, live. I think we've done enough dry runs. You can't practice forever, and it's the only way we have of quickly making sense of this market." "But we haven't ported the software yet." "Sod that. Let's just pick up the computer and plug it in. We haven't got time for any fancy stuff." Bondscape was a completely new computer system for analysing the bond markets. It used virtual reality, a computer technology that allows a user to feel that he is actually inside a computer-generated virtual world. Bondscape was brilliant. It had been developed by Richard Fairfax. Richard was my brother. Ed and I went down one floor to Information Services, this year's name for the computer department. There, I grabbed one of the computer analysts and persuaded him to help me physically pick up the Bondscape system and carry it up to the